This conference will now be recorded.
Hello, everybody. Jordan Girth here with the National Weather Service Office of Observations. Thank you for joining us for the Satellite Book Club Seminar Series. This is session number 168. The title of today's presentation is A Curious Conclusion Using GOES Geostationary Lightning Mapper to Predict Tornadogenesis on December 15th, 2021. I'm pleased to have Laurel McCoy, Lead Meteorologist at the Weather Forecast Office in Omaha, Nebraska with us. Discussion will be facilitated by Tim Schmidt, the GOES-R Algorithm Working Group Imagery Lead from NESDIS STAR. Just a few reminders, as you just heard, this session is being recorded. There will be, as there always is, an opportunity for Q&A after the presentation. Please post your questions in the chat and we will field them in the order they are asked. If you have not signed in with your name or some identifying information, for example, perhaps you're using an office account, please note your name when asking a question in the chat so we can follow up if necessary. If you would like to present as part of the Satellite Book Club, please contact our TowerS team, Kashad Bowman and Emily Maddox. And if you're looking for training materials, please contact Ross Van Til. I'd like to thank our TowerS team, Kashad and Emily, the Office of the Chief Learning Officer, the GOES-R JPSS program, our presenter, facilitator, and all of you for being with us today. Without further ado, let me formally introduce Laurel, who is a lead meteorologist at the Weather Forecast Office in Omaha Valley, Nebraska. She has been in the Weather Service for 9 years, starting her career in Portland, Oregon, and spending 3 years in Huntsville, Alabama, before moving to Omaha last year. Laurel, welcome to the Satellite Book Club.
Hi, thank you so much for inviting me. Like you said, I just moved to Omaha last year in 2022, September of 2022. So one of the first things when I got there was I wanted to look at one of the biggest events in recent history. So I looked at this December 15th, 2021 event that I'd watched happen while I was down in Huntsville. And coming from Huntsville, we did a lot with GLM. And so I wanted to look at this case a little bit closer using GLM. And so that's kind of the motivation behind this study. And so without further ado, let's get started with the presentation. Okay. So there we go. So a little bit about the event itself. This event had over about 120 tornadoes reported from Nebraska to Wisconsin. It was a very strong event, especially for December in this part of the country. Through eastern Nebraska and southwest Iowa, we had 25 tornadoes reported. There were likely more, but these were the numbers that we were able to find damage on. And we had wind gusts from this event as high as 92 miles per hour, and that was reported at the Lincoln Airport ASOS. So it was a very dynamic system. Here's the tornadoes from the DAT. You can see all the tornadoes across Nebraska and Iowa from this event, but it goes all the way up into Wisconsin as well. So I'll dig a little bit into the weather pattern from this event. You can see a strongly negatively tilted top trough. You can see strong divergence there over Nebraska. This is around 21Z on the 15th. Here at 850 millibars, you can see this the moisture surging in from the Gulf up into the Midwest, out ahead of this system. It's a very, very moist environment. Here, it's kind of hard to see, but this is the Cape and send an effective bulk shear from that 21Z time frame on the 15th. Right over eastern Nebraska into western Iowa, you have 1,000 to 1,500 joules per kilogram of Cape in December, and 60 to 80 knots of effective bulk shear over the area. And this is just extremely dynamic system, extremely dynamic environment out ahead of it, especially for December. Here's the surface map. We had temperatures, surface temperatures in the low to mid 70s, dew points in the mid 50s to low 60s for December. Sorry, I'm going to keep emphasizing that because you're talking about Nebraska and Iowa in December 15th. And that's just incredibly anomalous. Here's the SBC outlook. Leading up to this event, the days ahead of time, they really were highlighting more Iowa into Wisconsin, but as the days got closer and closer, they kept stretching that outlook farther and farther west until the day of they finally added eastern Nebraska, just because the models just weren't handling how unstable the environment was ended up being in eastern Nebraska. As you saw earlier, we ended up with tornadoes all the way down into Hastings area in south central Nebraska. So we certainly had a very dynamic environment that day. So we had 25 different tornadoes across just our area in Omaha. I looked at 9 different tornado events. I call them events because I looked at the Cumming County tornadoes as kind of one event, but there's 5 different touchdowns there. They're all kind of clustered into one area. So I'm calling them 9 different tornado events, with those Cumming County counting as one. But they're all EF1s, EF2s. We didn't have anything stronger than an EF2 in our area. So here you can see the Murray, Nebraska EF2. This one, let me start with the data I had access to didn't have parallax corrected GLM data. So you're going to have to kind of shift the GLM data a little bit and look southeast of the circulation for any sort of correlation between GLM and the circulation. So you're going to be looking more towards Nebraska City and Union for a correlation between a lightning jump and the circulation. And in this case, there really is no significant lightning jump correlated to this circulation. And that's, again, the Murray EF2. Cumming County, we had 5 different touchdowns associated with this event, and very little lightning activity with this with these touchdowns. I think what happened here was that it's on the northeastern side of the QLCS, and in that area we had much less instability, and so it's a more high shear, low cape environment. So it's going to your cloud tops are lower. You have less glaciation, so you just have less lightning in general. And so in this case, we just had a bunch of kind of spin up tornadoes. We did have one EF2, but it's just a little bit of a different type environment. So that might be why we didn't have any significant lightning jumps with any of these 5 tornadoes that went through Cumming County. Here's the Henderson, Iowa tornado. Again, this one had no significant lightning jumps southeast of the circulation. Again, the lightning activity is mainly northeast of the circulation. Now let's get into the ones that did have a lightning jump. We did have a couple that did. Here's Neola, Iowa. This one is actually north of that Henderson circulation. You can see we had we actually had lightning jump detected about 10+ minutes ahead of the tornado touching down. So this one did have significant lead time, but it's also associated with a Boeing segment there just south of that circulation. So keep that in mind. Here's Crescent, Iowa, another circulation that did have a lightning jump, this time around 6 minutes ahead of tornado touchdown. I put a question mark next to significant, but this was a very fast moving system, so I would argue that it probably is significant, but it is only 6 minutes. But again, it's associated with a circulation on the north side of a Boeing segment. So that leads me to a hypothesis that I'll talk about here in a little bit. So on to my findings. So overall, it was not a very successful hypothesis. I was hoping to find that lightning jumps were more associated with these circulations, and they just didn't. It just didn't pan out. Only 3 of the 9 tornado events showed any lead time for tornadogenesis, and I only showed you about 5 of them, but yeah, 3 of the 9 is not very successful. So at least in this study, in our study area, it did not provide any additional utility in predicting tornado development. In this case, is this anomalous? That's the next question. I personally think more analysis needs to be done. I would love to look at more warm season QLCS events, because again, this is the cooler season, a very dynamic and very fast moving system. Would a warm season system act differently? Possibly. So my hypotheses regarding these findings, this is kind of digging back into what I was mentioning earlier. I think the lightning jumps may be more associated with the mass flux on the associated with the Boeing segments instead of being associated with the circulations themselves. And that would be why we're seeing them more with those circulations on the north side, the Boeing segments. I think that if we looked at embedded supercells in, we might see more textbook lightning jumps, but in this case, we didn't have any embedded textbook supercells, so there wasn't really anything like that to analyze. But if I looked at some more warm season events, I might see something like that. But in this case, I think that's probably why my study didn't turn out the way I thought it would. So some of the challenges, I want to say a big thank you to Lead and the Tower S team for helping me access their archive data of this event. Our archiver went down, so we didn't have access to any of this data. I could get the satellite and I could get the model data online. I could get the radar data. I couldn't get the GLM data anywhere online, at least that I could find. And so I reached out to my friends at Huntsville, who got me in touch with Lee, who got me the AWIPS in the cloud session to capture all this data so I could do this analysis. And he was a huge help through all of this. But archived GLM data is very difficult to access, at least in my experience. If I want to look at some more warm season events and create a database of these to get a more scientific conclusion, I'm going to need a better way to access GLM data, download the data, or at least visualize the data other than AWIPS in the cloud and relying on him. So if anyone knows any better way to access GLM data, archive GLM data, I would love to know. So with that, I'm going to wrap up and open up the floor to discussion. And thank you so much for inviting me.
Tim, are you with us? Okay, it seems possible that maybe Tim's having some technical issues there with his microphone. I see him unmuted, but while we're waiting for Tim, let me thank you, Laurel, for that great presentation, the perspective that you provided on the use of GLM. I know a lot of field offices are very interested in how we can apply that to improve our performance and our IDSS. And I found some of your conclusions with regards to the bow echoes in particular very insightful. Just a few reminders before we dive into the Q&A here that we're going to have Dr. Bob Kulagowski with NESDA STAR discussing the enterprise rain rate quantitative precipitation estimate next week, Thursday, November 16th. I believe some of our team will be on the road in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And if you are looking for any support from the Tower S team, please do not hesitate to get in touch with Rashad Bowman and Emily Maddox. Maybe, you know, as Laurel showed, you're just looking for archive data, access to AWIPS in a cloud, or you have questions about the Satellite Book Club or configuration of satellite products. Kashad, Emily, our Tower S team through the Slack channel can help you with that. So please feel free, don't hesitate to get in touch. And just as a reminder, we also have our new Tower S RPM out there too. So hopefully your local site is getting scheduled for that. Yeah. All right, let's check back in with Tim.
Jordan, can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you now, Tim. Maybe okay. I'll pass it over to you to lead the
okay. Thanks so much for that. So yeah, first of all, Joseph Patton, you know, put a link in the about where GLM gridded products have been recently added to the DAC, and you can follow that link. Also, I guess, Jordan, could I ask you to read Joseph's first question, because I got out and back in, so I can't now see his first question where he talked about flash extent density.
Sure. So Joseph's first question was decreasing minimum flash area investigated as a possible precursor to tornadogenesis, and did the ground-based network show any lightning jumps prior to touchdown?
And is Laurel unmuted? I can't hear.
Sorry, could you repeat that?
All right.
Okay, we'll try again.
Okay.
A few technical issues today. Was decreasing minimum flash area investigated as a possible precursor to tornadogenesis, and did the ground-based network show any lightning jumps prior to touchdown?
So no decreasing flash extent density wasn't investigated. No, I didn't look at that. So that is certainly a thought. And ground-based networks, I did look at those a little bit, but I didn't do any in-depth analysis into those either.
Okay, thank you. Bob Kulagowski writes that you can find a partial archive of GLM data on the Amazon Web Services. He's got a link there for GOES 18, but you can also change the URL to get GOES 16. Can somebody correct me? That's not the gridded product though, correct? Anyone know that?
The one that Bob shared is the level 2. The link that Joseph shared is a link to the gridded products that are available through the DAC.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Scott. I was curious for this case. Well, did you look at the Prob Severe, either version 2 or version 3 for what their estimates would be for severe weather in the next 60 minutes?
No, I really think it would be interesting to see with the speed of this system. I don't know how helpful it would have been, but because I wasn't working this event, I don't know how much they used it live during the event. But certainly something I'd like to go back and look at to see how helpful it would have been.
Okay. Great.
Tim, there was one other comment that
Yep.
might have dropped out for you. A comment from NWS Denver. They said, "Hi, Laurel, great job. What have you found is the best way to analyze GLM lightning jumps at OAX?"
So the best way for me to look at lightning jumps is just what I like to do is I put it on my display with my radar data, and like I put the 9 panel up as kind of my my situational awareness, and I use it mainly as a kind of a situational awareness to point me towards which storms I need to analyze first. So I put it up right with all my radar data itself, and as I start to see those yellows and oranges, that's when I start to look a lot closer, especially if I see a red. I know I need to be looking a lot closer at a storm.
All right. Yeah. Thanks for covering me there, Scott. The Weather Service wants to know, how did you take into account parallax with your thoughts? This would be challenging with QLCSs.
So I went online and I was trying, and I know that the parallax is southeast, but I went and online to try and figure out exactly how far southeast. I couldn't find an exact like mileage, but I did basically look at the storms themselves and try and correlate to the north, kind of the jumps to the stronger Boeing segments, and try and correlate the distance there, and try and bring that farther south and figure out kind of the distance. And it was a little bit more subjective, but it was but it was about a county southeast in my subjective analysis there.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for that. I just put in the chat. There's it's just a static case for different parallax, where you can adjust the height of the cloud just theoretically, and there's a readout, and then you can move around the image. So it shows that obviously the correction, would be towards the subsatellite point, and then obviously as you get further away or higher objects, you can get that seen as well.
Thank you so much. That's helpful. I know that we have in our AWIPS parallax corrected GLM, but I don't know exactly how that is calculated.
Yeah. Scott, did you want to talk just a little bit about the, I guess, the level 2 versus the gridded and parallax corrected and versus not, if that makes any sense?
Yeah, and if I could get to go back to the first question from Joseph Patton, he was asking specifically about the minimum flash area product, which is one of the other ones that has been found useful. And it's the idea that when you have frequent small flashes is when you're getting these lightning jumps. And so it might be that you can look at the flash extent density alongside the minimum flash area and get kind of two senses of the same signal. And then another one that's been looked at in landfalling tropical cyclones to try to see which of the cells might produce a tornado. There's been, I don't know if any published studies have shown it, but constricting updrafts, almost that signal can almost be seen in the GLM minimum flash area. So that's something I recommend folks keeping your eye out on as you're watching these storms. And then, yeah, in terms of the level 2 data isn't available by default in AWIPS. It does have a parallax correction, but it's nothing fancy. It just assumes estimated cloud top height based on just an ellipsoid. And so it introduces a little bit of uncertainty in and of itself. And so that was taken out, that parallax correction was taken out when the gridded products were produced. And so they match much more closely with the ABI. And so if you do want to see parallax corrected GLM, you just look at the level 2 points. And that's something that it is available in AWIPS for those that are interested. They just need to work with Lee to sort out how to turn those on. And he has a little additional training that he provides to make sure there's no confusion introduced by showing both data sets and AWIPs. But that's the nutshell, in a nutshell, Tim. Is there anything specific I could
Yeah.
add?
No, I think that covers it. Thanks. There was a question by Steve Goodman, reminiscent of the low-top tornadic supercell in Gainesville, Georgia. The National Weather Service report by Don Burchus of NSSL. To explore your hypothesis further, it would be very useful to compare the vertical radar cross-sections to see if the mixed phase region is well developed that would indicate effective charging.
Okay.
So, yep. And let's see, I think another questions I have, the loop that you're showing right now, the GLM data is basically over in this case the ABI visible. Maybe there's a little bit of transparency. Have you ever thought about putting a little bit more transparency so you can see through that, but still get the density of the GLM?
Yeah, so I did when I was doing the analysis. This is just a loop that I had Lead generate for me in the last minute, so I could have something cool to throw on the slide.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. No. Okay. Yeah. Cool. On the slide is good. So, from Aaron Johnson, thanks for presenting. Personal observation: I found lightning jumps and supercells are just many non-tornadic storms exhibit a very similar lightning jump signal to tornadic storms. In other words, a very high false alarm issue with trying to use with much precision for determining risk for tornadogenesis. Null events are just as interesting as tornadic in these studies. Thanks again.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that. Certainly, it's certainly not the end all be all. You don't want to be issuing tornado warnings on lightning jumps themselves. You want to be looking at other factors as well. So this certainly isn't the only thing you're looking at. You want to be looking at everything else as well.
Yep. Yeah. No, that's a good point. I always get it all. Everything. I know it's easier said than done to integrate from the different sources, radar, ABI, GLM, etc. But you've done a good job in this. Another Steve asked, nice presentation. Do you think that perhaps one, relatively short spin up times of the tornadic circulations and likely very strongly tilted nature of the updrafts in a case like this also may have been factors that contributed to the low correlation between lightning jumps and tornadoes?
Yes, I think that very well could have contributed in this case as well. It was a very strongly tilted QLCS just because of how strongly sheared it was. So it could very well have been contributed to the issues that I had. So that's why I want to look at some more textbook QLCSs.
Yeah. So I guess speaking of that, what are some of your next steps with this project?
So I'd like to kind of create a database of QLCSs that I want to look at and maybe go through. That's what I was doing when I got mixed up earlier, was I was grabbing those links from Joseph Patton and Bob Kuligowski. I was grabbing those links so I could try and save them to get the to get access to that GLM data. Yeah. So I could start looking at more warm season QLCS events, find some stuff that I want to look at in the future.
Yep. And just for all, they do save the chat, these links or whatever, so don't feel like you have to grab a link while you're presenting as well. They are reproducible. I think Jordan Girth has a question.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks. Following up on some of the previous comments, Laurel, I'm sure as you know, working severe weather, your screen real estate is limited, lots of things entering your brain, possibly multiple different storms within your CWA forecast area. I'm wondering your thoughts about how, GLM fits into that, especially in this type of environment where you're looking for very quick spin ups. I assume that, velocity data, correlation coefficient, those are going to be some of the more often looked at observational fields for the services that you're trying to provide, issuing tornado warnings. And I know there's some offices do it slightly differently. They have mesoanalyst desk or varying divisions of responsibilities. How do you think GLM fits into a whole of office warning paradigm?
So to me, it probably fits in both in the mesoanalyst and in the radar operator paradigm. I think that for the radar operator, it's probably not on your like warning panel itself, but I have it on my like I said, I have a 9 panel that's kind of just an overview, and then I have my 4 panel of the main velocity, correlation coefficient, ZDR, that kind of stuff. So I have my 4 panel that I use for my deep dive, and then I have my 9 panel just kind of for situational awareness. And I have GLM there on the 9 panel for basically kind of going through and picking out which storms I need to deep dive in on first. And so that's where I think it fits in with the radar analyst, is just for that situational awareness, which storms do I need to analyze right now? And for the mesoanalyst, it's kind of like, which areas of the storm do I need to focus on which areas of the storm are the most active right now, and which areas are developing, that kind of thing. So.
Right. Well, I don't see any other hands raised or questions. So I think I'll hand it back to you, Jordan.
All right, thank you, Tim. And once again, thanks so much to Laurel. Really appreciate it. Just as a reminder, our Satellite Book Club will continue next week, Thursday, November 16th at the normal time of 12 p.m. Eastern Time. We're going to be hearing about the Enterprise Rain Rate Quantitative Precipitation Estimate. In the meantime, as I mentioned earlier, if you have any questions for our Tower S team, and that includes installing that Tower S RPM, get in touch with Kashad Bowman and Emily Maddox. With that, we'll wrap it up today. I would particularly like to note, going into this Veterans Day weekend, thanks to those of you that have served our country through the military. Thanks to all of our staff in the National Weather Service and everybody joining us today. And thanks again, particularly to our presenter and facilitator and everybody in the Tower S team that makes this happen each and every week. So with that, take care, everybody, and hope you join us again next week. Bye-bye.